Hey, it's Joanne Muse of the Taxing Lady, live here on Facebook on my business page here. And we're also going to put this on my YouTube channel after it's recorded. And I am here to give you your tax lien investing tip for today. And today we're going to talk about bidding at the Florida tax sales. So why are we going to talk about bidding at the Florida tax sales? Well, because the Florida tax sales are happening soon. Okay, very soon. They happen in May, and they're going to be opening up. One of them is going to be opening up tomorrow. One of the counties will be opening up tomorrow. And by the way, they are all online. So last time we talked about the Maryland tax sales, which are going on now as well. And we talked about the bidding procedures for the Maryland tax sales, which are very different and a little complicated. Well, Florida is a little different too, and some people don't understand what goes on in Florida. For instance, why do a lot of liens get one at 0.25%, right? First of all, unlike some other states where they bid down the interest rate, in Florida, they bid it down in 0.25% increments, not in 1% increments like they do in Arizona or New Jersey. They bid it down in 0.25% increments, and it will be bid down as low as 0.25%. Now, I've even seen some bids down to zero, which I do not recommend. Just like in Arizona, I do not recommend that you bid down to zero. Because if you bid down to zero in Florida, then you do not get the penalty. There is a minimum penalty in Florida that is 5%. The reason why, one of the reasons that investors will bid down as low as 0.25% is because they're not going to get 0.25%. There is a 5% minimum penalty. Now, this 0.25% is an annualized interest rate. But this is a straight penalty, 5% paid on the certificate amount. So if you get, and certificates, taxes tend to be lower in Florida. So let's say you get a $500 lien and you get it at, something really low, like 0.25%. Well, let's say it redeems a year later. Now, there is a 2-year redemption period in Florida. Let's say it redeems a year later. Are you going to get 0.25%? No, you're going to get 5% in 1 year. Let's say it redeems 2 years later. Well, you're still going to get 5% now in 2 years. So really, it's like getting 2.5% per annum. All right, but that's why most of these are going to redeem in a year. About 70% of them are going to redeem in the first year. And so you're going to get 5% on your money. So that's why the institutional bidders are going to bid down to 0.25%. So what are the strategies for bidding in Florida? Well, you could do a couple of things. If you want to bid on the single family homes and you want to go against the hedge funds and the banks, well, then you've got to bid down to 0.25%. And cross your fingers that you're going to be able to get something, because these companies are going to have multiple bids on the same property. Some of these sales, you'll find thousands of bids on one lien. Okay, so that's one strategy. Just bid 0.25% on everything, and maybe you'll get something that you want if you're going after those properties, single family homes, right? But the other strategy, my strategy, is to bid on the things that the big investors don't want. They don't always want land. They don't always want farm. They don't always. And what I do is I teach my clients how to look for those things. How to, first of all, find out what it is that everybody else, including the big companies, are not bidding on, what they don't want. And then which of those properties are good properties anyway, even though they don't want them, like good building lots, there's nothing wrong with that. Farmland, there's nothing wrong with that, right? So then do your due diligence on those properties and put your bids in on those properties. and get their past results so that you see like what is a reasonable interest rate that you can get. All right, so that's one thing. Now, the other thing about these online sales, there's two types of online sales. There's proxy bid sales and direct bid sales. You only want to bid in proxy bid sales, and that is because let's say you bid, let's say on all the properties you want, you bid your lowest that you're willing to accept. And let's say it might be 0.25%, it might be 5%, but whatever it is, your lowest that you're willing to accept, you bid, okay? Well, in a proxy bid situation, let's say you bid 5%, but let's say you bid on something that not everybody else wants, and the next highest bidder, or the next, and let's say you're the lowest bidder, but the next highest bidder bid it at 10%, right? Well, then you are actually going to win that lien, not at 5%, but at 9.75%. That's if it's a proxy bid situation, and forgive me for my messy writing here, okay? So let's just see. See if I could make that a little neater for you. All right, so that's what you're going to win it at. But if this was a direct bid sale, you're going to win that at 5%. So my strategy is not to bid in direct bid sales, in the online sales that are direct bid. I like the proxy bid situations. All right, so that couple of different tips. I actually gave you 3 different tips. If you can't remember what they are, rewatch this video when we're done. The replay will be right here in the Facebook group, on the Facebook page, on my business page. And so I gave you 3 different tips. Okay, so see if you know what they are. If you don't, rewatch this and figure it out, okay? 3 different tips on bidding in Florida, bidding at the Florida tax sales. So if you're watching this, say hello in the comments. I could see your comments here. I'm on StreamYard. It's easy for me to show my screen when I do this on StreamYard, or not show my screen, but it is easier for me to show my screen, although I haven't figured out how to do that yet. But it's easier for me to do things like right on my board and show you that. So let me know who's here, where you're from. What we talked about today was bidding in Florida. What we talked about last week was bidding in Maryland. So if you have questions, both of these sales are, Maryland's going on now, but a lot of the sales are actually going to happen in May and some in June for Maryland. Florida is going to be happening in May. One of the sales opens up tomorrow for registration, but most of the sales don't happen until the middle of May. They are all over until they are all over by June 1st, except for maybe a couple of them. Most of them are going to be done by June 1st. So if you have questions that you would like me to answer next week in tips, well, actually, you could come to my Q&A. I do Ask the Tax Lien Lady live on Tuesday at 2 p.m. And then I do a tip here on Thursday. And so if you'd like something that you'd like me to train on, I can do that next Thursday. And if you have questions that you'd like me to answer for you live, then come on Tuesday at 2 p.m. Now, tonight, we have a special masterclass. And tonight's masterclass is on how you can make high returns on your money without the typical risk. And so here's another tip on a strategy for the Florida tax sales and why investors might bid down to 2.5%. Now, I told you one reason why is they get the 5% penalty instead, right? But here's another reason why. Now, a lot of people think that, oh, it's because in 2 years they can foreclose on the property, but they can't in Florida. You don't foreclose on the property in Florida after the 2-year redemption period. What you do in Florida is you do what you do a tax deed application. It's called a TDA, which stands for tax deed application, right? So after 2 years, if it doesn't redeem, you do a TDA, right? Tax deed application. You have to pay any subsequent taxes, any outstanding taxes, other outstanding liens. And guess what? Everything that you pay when you do this tax deed application starts accruing at 18%. That's the reason why big investors will pay 0.25%, or will not pay. They have to buy a lien. They will get it at 0.25%, because in 2 years they'll be able to put a lot more money in and start getting 18% on that. Okay, so that's why they're doing that. And that's if it doesn't redeem, they'll be able to do that. Okay, so a little bit different than the other states. That's what happens in Florida. Tonight, not tonight, this afternoon, in a couple of hours, actually at 3 p.m. Eastern time, we have a master class. So learn more about how you can get high returns on your money without the typical risk of real estate, with less risk than the stock market, in this master class tonight, not tonight, I'm sorry, this afternoon. And for you guys on the Pacific Coast, it's going to be 12 p.m. It'll be your lunchtime. For us over here on the East Coast, it is going to be 3 p.m. when we do this. Okay, so let me put it in the comments here for you, where you can register for this masterclass. It is free, and it is at taxlienlady.com/sale-success-masterclass. All right, so I just submitted it, and we'll see if it goes through. All right, I think it did. Sometimes the first time I put it in, no, it tells me there's an error. It didn't go through. That happens. Like it shows up, and then it tells me, no, error, it didn't go through. So I will put it in there for you again. And that's only because I'm not actually on Facebook. I'm doing this on StreamYard, and then StreamYard streams it to the Facebook page. Okay, so I'm putting that in again for you. And usually the second time it works. So let's see. Okay, so you guys you should be seeing that in the comments now. And you could let me know if you're seeing that in the comments, and you can register to be on tonight's masterclass. So in that masterclass, I'm going to give you my 5 steps for investing profitably in tax liens. Actually, it's actually the 5 steps for buying profitable tax liens, right? 2 more steps to what happens after you buy a tax lien. But if you want to get started, the most important thing to know is how to buy good liens. Okay, so I'll give you my steps for that, and a whole bunch of other stuff. Just register. It's free. It's at 3 p.m. this afternoon here on the East Coast. On the West Coast, it's your lunchtime, 12 p.m. Pacific. Okay? All right. And if you have questions, bring them to me at 2 p.m. next Tuesday, and I'll have another tip for you next Thursday. All right? I will see you. Hope to see you at 3 p.m. this afternoon. Bye.